Welcome to Career Conversations by Future Forward. I'm your host, Owen Burrell.
And I'm Micaela Tramontano, VP of Operations at Future Forward.
And today we're here with a special guest, Mr. Jackson.
Hi, I'm Drake Jackson, and I am a teacher at Summit High School.
So, Mr. Jackson, it is evident that you love your job, and all the students adore you. So I have to ask, when you were in high school, did you want to be a teacher?
I'm actually really glad you asked that question. The answer is no. The answer is I wasn't opposed to it. It's not like, somebody mentioned the idea of me being a teacher and I was like, ew, no. But it was definitely not something that was on my radar. The expectation that was set on me in high school was, and I got to give my parents and grandparents and teachers credit. It was never like we expect you to be a doctor or we expect you to be an attorney. In fact, my father is an attorney and very much did not want me to be an attorney. Sorry, side note. Fun fact about my dad, his number one achievement as a parent, he says, is that neither my sister nor I became attorneys. He absolutely hates his job. But anyway, that's a separate conversation. The point that I'm making is nobody pressured me into a particular field, but the expectation was that I would do something big because, I had the good grades and the good ACT score and all these things. And I got to tell you, people don't consider being a high school teacher big. They don't consider being a middle school teacher big. And so it wasn't something that I was opposed to. It just wasn't really something that was on my radar. But what I really wanted to do in high school was I had aspirations to potentially to work for the government, like either as a political operative or as an economist, which is the closest thing of what I'm saying to what I do now. But yeah, if that answers that question.
So you kind of touched on this, but why did you decide to teach AP, microecon, and algebra, and the maths, and ACT prep? Like, how'd you come on that? What was the journey?
Oh, I'm going to tell you about the journey. Okay, so I went to college, and by the time I went to college, I knew that I was not going to be a political operative. That was more of like a mid-high school thing. By the time I went to college, I knew, because here's the situation. Politics drain me spiritually. They drain me emotionally. They drain me. I find them to be a pestilence by and large on our society. And I knew that even if I wasn't the politician, even if I wasn't, the one having to sell my soul, I knew that having to work for one would be close enough to selling my soul, so I knew that wasn't going to be a thing. And so by the time I got to college, I thought to myself that there was a chance. I actually went in undecided. I went as an undecided major, but I thought to myself, maybe I might be an economist. Maybe I might be an economist. And so I actually declared a major about halfway through my freshman year in mathematical economics. And the goal was, in my mind, to become an economics professor. And I don't think I was ready to admit it to myself at the time. But the truth is that the reason I wanted to be an economics professor is because I wanted to teach economics. Like, that's why. That's why I wanted to do it. And so, but I was just determined that, because here's the thing, you have to remember the expectation, right? Being a professor, doing groundbreaking research is a big thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's those big expectations that I had for myself. And it wasn't until about 2/3 of the way through college that I sort of looked around panicked because I had tried out some research experiences. And I realized I hated research with the fiery, burning passion of 1,000 suns. I hated it. It wasn't personal enough for me. The results weren't immediate enough for me. Mainly, I just didn't get to work with people enough. Like, it really, and I am not good at long-term projects unless I'm doing them collaboratively. And you have to be and even in projects when you're collaborating with research, you have to be very self-motivated. And I can be self-motivated for a short-term project, but I can't be that self-motivated for a long-term project unless I'm doing it with somebody. So I got about 2/3 of the way through and I asked myself the question. I said, okay, why did you really want to be an econ professor? And the answer was because I wanted to teach it. And that was when I figured it out. It was like junior year of college. I was like, it's because I want to teach it. That's why. And so I took an alternative pathway to teaching because I didn't get a teaching. It was too late to switch my major to teaching. So I did a program called Teach for America, which places teachers in like low-income, high-need areas that need teachers really badly. And I actually got placed in Northeast Arkansas in a little town called Blytheville, Arkansas. And so that is what led me to teaching. And they didn't really offer economics as an independent option there. It was just social studies. And so I did not sign up for social studies because I wasn't really that interested in teaching history. Interestingly, I think I would enjoy it more now than I would have at the time. So I ended up being a math teacher. And they placed me in math because I was able to do really well on like the math qualifications test and all this kind of stuff. And so I ended up teaching a combination of middle school and high school math across, I did 3 years in Blytheville, Arkansas at Blytheville Middle School, 8th grade math. And then I actually I took an operations position, not even a teaching position, an operations position at a charter school on the north side of Nashville. And that was the worst decision I've ever made professionally. It was a terrible, terrible idea. And I would never go back to that. But leaving mid-year got me into Williamson County Schools because they needed someone at Page High School. And so I actually taught for half a year at Page High School. And I taught Algebra 1. And then after that, I got a job at Spring Station Middle School. They didn't need anybody at Page the next year. I got a job at Spring Station Middle School, where I proceeded to teach 8th grade math for 2 years before coming to Summit. So then when, I'm at Summit, I realize all I have to do to add these other certification areas to my certificate, right, is just go take tests. Y'all, I was born to take tests. Taking tests is like my favorite thing in the world. I'm exaggerating. I don't like taking tests nearly as much as I love people, but you get the idea. And so I went and added to my certificate, I can now teach math, English, history, geography, government, and economics. And I'm working on a master's degree in school counseling. So, and I don't intend to immediately go be a school counselor when I'm finished. I intend to stay teaching for a while, but econ was the one I was passionate about. And so it was a real full circle moment for me coming back around to my original college plans when Miss Ryan, who was the previous AP econ teacher here, when she decided to transfer to Independence. It was a real full circle moment for me when they asked me if I was interested in taking the AP econ position. It was really emotional for me, actually, because it was just like I had actually been offered an AP econ position at another school in Nashville. Not everybody knows this. I was actually offered another AP econ position to leave Summit before the 23-24 school year and go teach at, it was Hume Fogg in downtown Nashville, would have been a magnet school, to teach AP econ. And I said to myself, no, I'm where I'm supposed to be, and then that same year that I was going to be teaching econ there, I ended up teaching econ here. And so it was just such a blessing, such a uniquely good time in my life. I really love that I've made it full circle. So that was a long answer to your question, but.
Yeah. So you said Summit was like, this is where you're supposed to be. How did you know that? Like, what helped you find that?
I'll tell you what, that's a fantastic question, Owen. The truth is that I think that the first step to knowing if you are where you're supposed to be. So for me, I will say that for some people, there are aspects of this that are based in faith, that are based in community, a feeling of purpose, a feeling of direction. And like both of those things, the faith piece and the community piece, are pieces of it for me. But what I want to focus on is that I think that one of the best things you can do in your 20s is you can figure out what really matters to you, and you can make intentional choices to align your life decisions and what you're doing with your daily life to your values, right? So for me, my number one thing in terms of my day-to-day life is a sense of community. I want to feel like an active part of a community. I want to be pouring into people's lives in the community. I want people to be pouring into my life. I want to be surrounded by warmth and knowledge of each other, mutual knowledge, and just like, it's a community. For me, I had the community in Blytheville, Arkansas, actually. But the problem was in Blytheville, Arkansas, I had the community, but I didn't have the daily joy in what I was doing. Then I got to Page, and Page was more just a stop along the way. At Spring Station, I grew to love what I was doing, which I didn't love in Blytheville, what I was doing. But I grew to love what I was doing, and the community was there, but there's, middle schools in Williamson County are operated like, just elementary schools on steroids. That's not, anyone who's met me knows that that's not really my style. I'm much more freewheeling than that, right? And so when I got to Summit, I immediately had this experience where all of the things that I love about community, all of the things that I love about the feeling of togetherness merged with my love of what I was doing day in and day out. And it was the combination of those two things. And also it was a combination of those two things, and then how supported I feel by everyone here. Like Miss Lamb's management style is perfect for me personally. I get along really well with the assistant principals. The parents of the Spring Hill community have been absolutely wonderful to me by and large, almost without exception. Like, they've just been absolutely fantastic to me in the way that they've treated me, in the way that they speak to me, in the way that they speak about me. It's been a really special experience for me. Like all of those things. And so I think that it was sort of the fact that all those things came together at once. And I realized it was probably halfway through my very first year here at Summit. I was like, man, this is what it's supposed to feel like. It's one of those things you don't know until you know.
Yeah, Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you keep talking about these big expectations that you had on yourself.
Yeah.
How did these big expectations affect your mental health growing up?
It's a really good question. I'll tell you, I have been blessed with good mental health most of my life. I've dealt with some anxiety. I'm very open about the fact that I dealt with some anxiety. When I was at that charter school that I mentioned to you, I dealt with a clinical level of general anxiety, and I was not well for a few months. But I heavily recommend therapy. Went to therapy, talked through my anxiety, talked about some of the issues that underpinned and underlaid my anxiety. It was a great, great choice. And also, like, I got out of the situation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I managed to exit the situation so that I could, like, get back healthy again. But, like, when I was in high school, I don't think that the expectations impacted my mental health so much as they impacted my self-image. And not necessarily in a negative way, but not also not in a positive way either. It's just like I was blocked from seeing myself the way that I would end up being happiest. And I could only see myself where I was the highest achieving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the highest achieving is like don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that achievement isn't important to me at all. And I do feel like in some ways I am high achieving in my job and I'm high achieving in my life. But like I learned that the definition of impact is not so narrow as all that. Like I genuinely believe that I have a bigger impact as a teacher, like in terms of the kind of impact that I'm interested in having, and the kind that aligns with my values. I'm more interested in the kind of impact I have as a teacher than any impact I could have ever had doing groundbreaking research that changed somebody's life indirectly. And part of that is selfish because it's for my own, like I can see the results of, but some of it is just my natural gifts and strengths. Like my natural gifts and strengths are relational. Doing something in a room that benefits people months or years later does not align to my strengths. Doing something in a room with people where I can impact them directly is always going to bring the best out of me. It's going to keep me motivated. It's going to keep, you know what I'm saying? And I think that realization wasn't so much about, to return to your original question, I don't think it was so much about mental health as it was about perspective and, like I said, self-image, perspective, and having an appropriate view of myself that wasn't limited by expectations placed on me by myself or anyone else.
Yeah, so I love what you said about, like, changing, like, what you want to do in college. You weren't sure at first you want to go into research, and then you ended up finding teaching was for you. What would you tell a student that they don't know, like, what their skill set is yet, and what would make them good? What would you tell, like, to help them find that skill set?
Skill set, you mean to see if they would be interested in teaching, or just to help them find their skill sets in general?
Find, like, are they a people person, or would they be into research? Man. Like, what do they like?
Yeah, well, and part of here's the difficulty with teenagers. Like, and I mean, I'm talking to teenagers right now. Like, you all definitely know this. But the part of the thing is, like, are you the same person you were when you walked onto Summit's campus for the first time?
No way.
Are you the same person that you were? No. Right? No. Like, I don't, I didn't know you super well your freshman year. I didn't know either of you well until last year, but like I would say that neither of you is the same person, Ryan may be the most similar to who he was when he walked on campus of the three of you, and Ryan over here is also not the same person. You know what I'm saying? Like he's also not the same person he was when he walked onto campus. You all have grown up, you've matured, you've changed in a good way, I would say, not that you were bad or anything, but like the problem is that you're changing so fast that the moment that you figured something out about yourself, it might be changing. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Here's my advice. My advice is, more than anything, don't be afraid to try things. And by things, I don't mean vices, okay? I mean, don't be afraid to try a club, to try a leadership position, to try a sport, to try a class maybe that you're not sure you would like or not. You know what I'm saying? Try talking to a teacher, try social interactions, try getting involved at your church, try getting involved at your civic organization, try scouts. I mean, it's a little late to start scouts, but you know what I mean? Like do things that will let you know what you're passionate about. Because I think that what happens is people get locked into, they're locked in by a couple things. They put themselves in boxes because they think that they understand themselves, but they're not giving themselves enough credit to change and evolve and grow. And the other thing that happens is fear stands in between people and their goals. I will say that for me, this happened to me too, right? This happened to me too. Like my biggest, and this is kind of a silly example, but I feel like it's a good metaphor for what happens in people's heads. My big one was trying foods, right? When I was in high school, I was a picky eater. I liked pizza. I liked chicken strips and chicken nuggets. I liked French fries. I liked mac and cheese made a certain way. And yeah, other than that, like snack foods and things like that, that's really it. Like that was the kind of stuff I loved ramen noodles. Ramen noodles were good, right? But that's it. Like the list of things I liked was very short. And I got to college and I actually started trying things that I wouldn't have even been willing to try before. And all of a sudden, like now I'm a little bit of a foodie. I still have certain things I'm really picky about, but like in general, I'm kind of a foodie now. And I look back on high school and I'm like, man, I could have been experiencing all that so much sooner. And so in the absence of being able to know yourself that well because of how much you're changing, try things so that you can give yourself a chance to learn things about yourself. Does that make sense? Like for me, it was foods, but for you, it may be like the different kinds of social contexts that you can thrive in, or it may be the different kinds of puzzles you can solve, the different kinds of challenges you can tackle, the different physical feats you can achieve. You know what I'm saying? You never know until you try. And a big part of that, and a big part of overcoming the fear, is deciding that at the end of the day, you don't really give a crap about other people's opinions, right? Like, and I'm not saying like take input from wise people in your life. Take input from people who love you and care about you. When I say don't care about other people's opinions, I'm not saying that you get to say screw you to your mother or your grandma. You know what I'm saying? And I'm also not saying that you look at your closest friends and you say, I don't care what you think, unless they're like toxic or something. Like, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that people have this thing that holds them back because they're afraid of how they're going to be seen. And the people who love you and care about you the most are going to celebrate you expanding your horizons and trying new things. And if they don't celebrate those things, then it's time to step back and look at the influences that you placed in your life, especially if it's your friends who are questioning those things. It's time for you to step back and look at those influences and see whether those influences are influences that you need to keep in your life. So that's sort of what I would suggest. Is it's less about actually being able to know yourself, and it's more about boldness, fearlessness, and trying new things.
I would say I think we both see that in DECA as well, because we have so many people that say, I'm not going to do good at this. I don't want to, I don't think I'm ready to do it, but I want to do it. They just need it. Once they put themselves out there, they love it and they improve and they do better. It's just they need to take that first step to get out of their comfort zone and get doing it.
The number one thing standing between people and their success is belief. It depends on the flavor of success. I'm never going to be an NBA player no matter how much I believe, right? I'm not being ridiculous. But I agree with you completely. Like people's capacity is so far beyond what they think it is.
So you talk about how you love community, and I know I've struggled with maintaining relationships in my life, and I know that a lot of professional careers are based around maintaining relationships.
Networking, you mean?
Yeah, or even just keeping up with a relationship. Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to students who are struggling to maintain important relationships in their life?
Oh man, it is never too early to start being intentional, and I think that there's this belief that if you have to write it down and you have to put reminders in your phone and things like that, then it's not authentic. And that's just a lie. If you decide, whether it's for emotional reasons or spiritual reasons or professional reasons or practical reasons, whatever your reasons are, if you decide that it is important to your life and to your future to maintain relationships, which, hint, it probably is. There are very few people that it's not important for, right? But if you decide that that's important for your life, the most important trait that you can develop is intentionality and conscientiousness. Doing things on purpose. You know what I'm saying? Don't just I feel like a lot of teenage life is just going with the flow. You know what I mean? It's just very much and I'm not even talking, even some people who are super intentional about staying on top of their grades and staying on top of their sports and their clubs and everything, even some of those people are very much just I'm going to do what feels right when it comes to their relationships. And while I'm not saying that that's morally wrong, because number one, that would be an opinion anyway, but number two, I don't even believe it's morally wrong. While it's not morally wrong, it does not set a good foundation for the kind of maintenance of relationships and networking that you're talking about. It doesn't set a good foundation for that. There's nothing wrong with putting your grandma's birthday in your phone. Just like there's nothing wrong with setting reminders in your phone to check in with your English teacher from last year every once in a while, once every other month or so that when it comes time for a college recommendation, you've kept up a relationship with that English teacher and they can write you an excellent recommendation. It is never a bad idea to plant reminders for yourself, to create a system for yourself to make sure that you do what doesn't come naturally to you. I have to do it. I have to do it for sure. Now, relational stuff, that comes very naturally to me, right? You know what doesn't come naturally to me? Household chores don't come naturally to me. And I'm an adult. I do my chores, right? Like, I do what needs to be done. But, like, those things don't come naturally to me. You know what I have to do? I have to sit down and calendar out time to do that stuff because I will not remember to do it, right? And maybe for you, I'm not saying you specifically, the generic you, maybe for another person, that's the same thing with keeping up the relationships. So I guess what I'm saying is make a system, be intentional. It's not too early to start, and it's not weird. You do what you got to do.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think the reminders is a huge thing, especially with keeping up with people. Like I said, like friends in college, like I want to keep up with them and I want to see how they're doing, but it's easy to like, you know, every day, like not even think about it. You know, just having that reminder there to say, hey, check up on how they're doing, you know, where they're going for sure. Like I think that's huge.
Absolutely. I have a whole list of former students that I like to check in with from time to time, and I very much follow the same. Like, again, I don't usually have to put reminders in for things like that, but if I find that somebody's sort of fallen off the face of the planet a little bit, I'm putting reminders in. I'm putting reminders in because it's just not going to happen. I've decided that it's important to me, and I'm going to make the intentional decisions to align my actions and my life with my values, and my values are relationships first, people first.
I've heard among students say, like, I don't want to go to college because it's just, like, a paper with a degree, or, like, I don't know if, like, I know there's more career paths besides college, but as someone who attended college, what was your key takeaways? Like, what are the most important things you've learned in college? And it could be anything.
No, I'm really glad you asked that question that way. Well, for me, first of all, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without college. So, like, I recognize that there are careers that people can do where you do not need a 4-year college degree. For some careers, you only need a 2-year degree. For some careers, you only need a tech school certificate. And then there are some careers where you don't need anything at all, and I recognize that. But first, recognize that for a lot of careers and for more and more careers, you do need the piece of paper. So, like, just a piece of paper to me never made any sense, because that piece of paper unlocks all kinds of doors for you depending on what you want to go into, right? For me, I literally, like, you can't be a teacher without a 4-year college degree. Every teacher who's ever taught you has a 4-year college degree, unless they pulled the best scam you've ever heard of, right? So I want to start there. But I got to say that actually my favorite thing about college was that college was a chance to take all of the lessons I had learned and all of the things that I had learned about myself while I was in elementary school, middle school, and high school, and to go into a new environment where I could sort of, I'm not saying I was a chameleon, I'm not saying I wasn't true to who I was. What I'm saying is that because I wasn't dealing with, when I was at home in Western Kentucky, I'm from Western Kentucky, right? I'm dealing with people knowing the 17-year-old Drake Jackson, but I'm also dealing with those same people also knew me when I was 3. Or knew me when I was 10. And so their perception of who I am as a person is going to be influenced both by who I am and who I was. When you go to college, one of the coolest things, and this isn't just college, right? This is if you go into the military, this is if you go, but when you go to college, you basically get to distill yourself down to all of the things that you like best and try out being in a new environment where you can only present, if you want to, you only present those parts of yourself to people. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying you're dishonest about the negative parts of yourself, but I'm saying, like, if there's something that was a part of you when you were 12 years old that's not a part of you anymore, right now you can't fully be free of that. But when you go to college, you can fully be free of it. And it really gives you a chance to explore who you really are. And it gives you a chance to establish yourself independently, independent of your parents, grandparents, whoever, right? And again, that doesn't mean you lose contact with them. It just means you establish yourself independently. And that self-knowledge brings a level of self-actualization. It brings a level of just like, awesomeness and peace into your life, depending on how you handle it, that I think is really cool and special. That was one of my biggest takeaways from college. Also, another big takeaway from college, I made some of the best friends in my life in college because you never know. Like, sometimes your high school friends are the best friends of your life. You know what I'm saying? And for a lot of people, I would say that, especially in your generation, it seems like your generation, thanks to social media and all those kind of things, it seems like your generation is going to be really good at keeping a few people from high school, a few people from college. If you know what I'm saying, like, you'll keep some people. But, like, what I have found is that college is usually so many people that there is an enhanced ability to find your people. In high school, your people are the ones you did stuff with. In college, your people tend to be more the people who think like you. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's really cool. It's the people who are like-minded. Now, I also will say that some of my best college friendships were people who don't think like me too. But they were people who believed the same way that I did. You know what I'm saying? Like, there were some college friends that shared my faith. There were some college friends that shared my politics. There were some college friends that shared my extracurricular. You know what I'm saying? And so I was just able to find multiple pockets of my people. And in fact, one of my biggest recommendations for people in college is don't just have one friend group. Now, some of you can only handle one friend group because you're just introverted and that's who you naturally are. I respect that. But if you're a person who likes people and you know what I'm saying, all that kind of stuff, whether you're extroverted or not, have more than one friend group. Have different people that you hang out with. Expand. That's another one of those expanding your horizons things. No, those were my biggest takeaways, though.
Yeah. So, what would you tell a student that wants to be like in your position? They like look up to you and they say, "I want to be a teacher like Mr. Jackson." What would you tell them so they can be like you?
A couple things here. A couple things. The most important thing is this: teaching is, in my opinion, not financially speaking. To financially speaking, you know exactly what you're going to get when you go into teaching, which is not, I mean, it's not like poverty level or anything like that, but it's also nothing exceptional, right? Like you can go and become a master electrician and make more than me within 2 or 3 years of getting out of your tech certificate. You know what you're getting when it comes to money. But in terms of life satisfaction, it is one of the biggest high risk, high reward careers that there is. So this is what I would say. Don't do it unless you actually think that you're passionate about it. And don't go in with rose-colored glasses, only looking at the good parts. Those would be my two biggest things. I would love for some of my former students to become teachers. It would bring me so much joy for some of my former students to become teachers. But I also recognize teaching is hard. We are expected in teaching, you are expected to be an expert in your content. You're expected to be an expert in pedagogy, which is the act of teaching your content, which is knowing your content and being good at teaching is two different things. You are expected to be good at building relationships. You're expected to be good at communicating with students, parents, administrators, other teachers, everybody else. You are expected to be good at managing student behaviors in the classroom. You are expected to be good at keeping up with paperwork and grades and be good with technology and all those things. The wide range of proficiencies that you are expected to have as a teacher is probably as wide as it is in any career for the amount that you get paid to do it. You know, any other career that's expecting that many different things from you is probably paying better. So like that doesn't bother me at all. I really it actually brings me a great deal of joy to have to do all of these things to make, to be a good teacher. But like, it's hard. And if you're not ready to buckle in and have a hard job, don't be a teacher. As much as I would love for you to be a teacher, don't be a teacher unless you're ready to buckle in. But if you are ready to buckle in, if that sounds like, because for me, that actually sounds enjoyable. That's not enjoyable to all teachers, right? Even great teachers. What those teachers figured out was that they had passion for something. Maybe it was passion for their content. Maybe it was passion for students. Maybe it was passion for teaching students their content. Maybe it was passion for all of those things. They figured out that they had a passion that outweighed the frustrations that come along with being expected to do that many things well. And that's how they find their satisfaction. So some people find it in the grind itself. I do a lot of the time. It gets tiring sometimes, but like I find it in the grind itself. Other people, there are just other factors that outweigh the grind, if that makes sense. So what I would suggest to people is be aware of what it is that you're getting into. Be deeply and profoundly aware of what it is that you're getting into. And if you are aware of it and it's something that still sounds exciting to you, full steam ahead. And I love having conversations with people who are thinking about being a teacher. It brings me a lot of joy. So,
how important do you think that goal setting has played in your personal life and career, professional life?
I'm going to be so honest with you. I actually feel like it has played an extremely important part in certain aspects of my professional and personal life, but that I actually wish I had been more intentional about goal setting from the beginning in my professional life. Like you know how some people, I said, some people are just kind of fly by the seat of their pants and do what feels instinctual when it comes to their relationships. I've never had that problem, but I have had that problem with my work. Not so much here at Summit. You haven't seen that version of me here, but early in my career, I just sort of did whatever presented itself professionally. Like, hey, I don't want to be a researcher and it's too late to change, so I guess I'll try the teaching thing. And I'm in the teaching thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess this is fine. I guess I'll keep doing this. And it took me years to love it. It didn't take me years to like it, but it took me years to love it, And And I wish that from the very beginning I had been more goal-oriented and gone in with a very clear, like, hey, here are my goals for this year. Now I'm a little bit better about that. So, for example, this year, my AP Econ pass rate was fine last year. It was pretty good for a first-year AP teacher. I hadn't taught an AP class before. Pretty good for a first-year AP teacher. Not at the level I wanted it to be. So I've come into this year with a formal goal, which I'm not sharing out loud, but it is a formal goal of what % pass rate I want for my AP Econ classes. I have come into this year with a goal of managing my time outside of school a little bit better so that I can maintain balance with all of my relationships outside school. Some stuff like that. Like, I have come in with goals now, but it wasn't until my late 20s that I really learned how to make those goals. And I feel like I would be like jamming and jiving even better in my life now if I had learned that at age 18 or age 22 or whatever. So.
Yeah. What do you think going into your job is like the most unexpected thing? Like, what caught you off guard the most about being a teacher that you never saw coming?
The amount of frustration that I would feel because of legislation that's out of my control. That's probably my least favorite part about my job. And to be clear, it's not anything close enough to make me actually miserable at my job. I still love my job. But like the part of my job that is most frustrating is that when you are a teacher at a public school specifically, when you are a public school teacher, you are subject to whatever your state's legislature has decided in all their political wisdom is the right thing for that moment. And this isn't about liberal versus conservative, Republican versus Democrat. This is about people coming in and passing laws that impact the daily lives of teachers without taking into account the actual impact on the daily lives of teachers, right? For example, having our doors locked and latched at all times. I understand why it's a law. I'm not saying that it was a dumb idea to pass the law, but when they passed the law, the language of the law did not take into account the daily lived experience of teachers. No librarian signs up to be a librarian thinking about the fact that you're going to have some fairly radical elements of our society that are going to be on your case all the time about book banning and all that kind of stuff. And same thing with English teachers. The English teachers sign up to share the joy of reading and the joy of, you know what I'm saying? They sign up to share joy with each other. You know what I'm saying? To share joy with their students and with each other. What they didn't sign up for was to be under constant political scrutiny because of the polarized nature of our society. And I haven't had to deal with that in my subject areas as much, but like having to deal with that brand of stuff is something I was not prepared for. And I wish that I had been more prepared for it because then it wouldn't frustrate me as much as it does. But as you can tell, that frustration hasn't impacted my overall happiness, but it is still the answer to your question.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about your professional career or how it might help students? Like any advice, any final words of advice?
Yeah, I actually do have that. And I'm choosing my wording very carefully here because I want to be sure that I get it right. Teaching, actually I have two things I want to share. The first thing is, and this is to all of you students currently and teenagers currently, but especially as you become adults and you start having kids. Nobody really tries to tell an optometrist how to do her job. Nobody really tries to tell a dentist how to do his job. Nobody really tries to tell, doctors how to do their jobs. Maybe some people do, but like the majority of people don't try because they feel that it's beyond the reach of, you know what I'm saying? They feel that it's beyond the reach of their expertise. I'm not saying that everybody thinks they know how to do the content part of teaching, but everyone had teachers their whole life. And so teaching is a profession that people feel very familiar with. And because of that, there is this idea about teaching that you've heard the classic, if you can't do, teach. Have you all heard that phrase before? It's the idea that like somebody who can't actually go out into the world and do something becomes a teacher instead. Wildly offensive. I'm not saying it's never happened. Obviously, there are people who default to teaching, but it's not the majority of teachers, right? Why would you default to this career? It's too hard and you don't get paid enough, But like, show teachers grace because the professional expectations on teachers are greater than anyone can imagine unless they're in it, Like only certain other professions like, nurses can really understand the level of stress that teachers are put under during the school year a lot of the time. So show grace to teachers, even if, maybe you're a person, you're listening to this and you're like, maybe I'll think about being a teacher, and that's great. But if you're the person who's not thinking about being a teacher, which I respect, show grace to teachers. And then the other thing is this. This is the biggest thing. Teaching is the best thing I've ever done. The first thing I say to people earlier when you said, what would you say to someone who's thinking about being a teacher, or however you worded it? The first thing I say is be aware of what you're getting into. And if you're getting into it, if you know what you're getting into, full steam ahead, all of that's true. I stand by that. But like, what I want people to understand is that teaching offers, if you decide that it's worth it to you, teaching offers an unparalleled opportunity to have a meaningful impact on the lives of other people and on society by impacting the next generation. And when you really care about kids, and when you really care about that impact, the impact that you're having and the impact that your students are going to have, it is the best and coolest thing that you will ever do. And it's also the hardest thing that you will ever do, but it's hard in a good way. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And at the end of the day, it'll be the most rewarding thing you've ever done. And at the end of the day, if your takeaway from what I've said today is anything other than that right there, when it comes to how I view my own career, let whatever was on your brain before be overridden by what I just said, because it really is so cool. And I really love it a lot. And I appreciate you all for taking the time to ask me about it. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome to see how passionate you are about your career. And I think every student at Summit notices like how passionate you are.
I appreciate that.
Parents do as well, for sure. Like my dad comes home and says, Owen, ask Mr. Jackson on how to get your ACT up. Ask him how to get your PSAT up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that perspective. Also, I'm sure he wants his pocketbook to be a little heavier at the end of your college experience too, which I don't blame him for one bit, but anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on today.
No, I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys a lot. You asked really good questions, and obviously, have anytime I can add perspective on anything, I'm a yapper and I've got some opinions. So, thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Career Conversations by Future Forward. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you'll be able to see new updates about new episodes coming out. And if you are interested in working with us, email us at futureforwards1@gmail.com, and then we can interview you. Thanks for watching.